Okay, let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready now.
All right, I'm gonna drop the same 10 scale.
Mm-hmm.
Relative snow. Yep, really low end relative to Kokushibo over Doma. And by the way, this means any form of cocoa is over Doma, by the way. And
Wait, let me
this
see.
relative to what's it called? Relative to Nova.
Why is Doma relative to Shinobi? Start with that.
What the fuck? Why are you start? What the fuck? Why are you
Why
starting
do you
with that?
think? I think Shinobi's above.
I mean, all right. Even if you put Shinobu above, it's still not enough to even get her near Kokushibo. It doesn't really matter.
All right, cool. So you don't mind her being above Doma then?
She can be above Doma, but there's no general quantification for how she would even, like, be near Kokushibo. So it would just be,
Okay,
it would just
okay,
be,
okay.
and my
So
opinion
if
still
you
make.
if you agree with that, we can talk about why Mii's relative to Kokushibo.
Okay, yeah. He reacts to Kokushibo. He tags him, and that
Okay,
obviously implies some sort of relativity. Whether it's
okay.
low end,
So
high end, or like it's equal bounding, doesn't really matter. Still relative.
when we're gauging relativity between two characters, what exactly do we look for? Like,
What
what
we
are
look
the
for is how they react, what type of attacks are used in a combative sense, and whether or not there's some type of external factors which would play a part in this, right? And I think for
uh,
Mauricio, there's not really any like key external factors that would make him, or like amp him to the point where he's not really relative to Kokushibo, but just because of that thing that he'd be relative, if you know what I mean.
yeah, we'll get to that. So could you show me him reacting to Kokushibo?
Yeah, he saved Sonic. He saved Sonic from getting damaged. Hold on, let me get the scan real quick.
You can just tell me the chapter. It's like 160
No,
something,
it's like
right?
one. It's like 174, I think. But I already have a scan.
170.
I already got the scan. Let me send in. I'm gonna send the scan for him. Yeah, it says Tokido, I won't let you die. You can still swing your sword with both arms. And Kokushibo uses I think that's his breathing. I don't fucking remember. Because I haven't read Demon Slayer in so long or this fight. But yeah, he uses that one attack with his moon breathing. The projectile, and then Muisho saves Hanami. So that's one form of reaction.
Okay, wait, give me a sec. I'm reading the chapter now.
Yeah, it should be 174, I'm pretty sure. It's between that range. It's between 174 and like 178, I think. I might be wrong now.
Probably like 173. As I read 174, it wasn't there. Uh, mm, 172. Okay, yeah, it's 172. Um, yeah, I just don't think that his blood demon art scales to himself in speed.
Wait, well, okay. One, why do you think that? Two, why is that relevant? Because if what's it called? If Kogoshibo's gonna use his blood demon on it, right? And he's going to attack with it into a projectile. Mind you, I'm pretty sure it stated that somewhere along those lines that it overwhelmed them or something of that sort. I don't really think it matters whether or not it scales to him because in some way, shape, or form they still scale somewhat similar. which would
Uh, I, I
still
I
suffice.
disagree.
Burn.
I think that typically blood demon arts tend to be like significantly slower than the person that's casting them. And I can give you an example. So are you aware of like when Tanjiro fights Gyutaro solo whilst Tengen gets like knocked out or something?
Isn't Gyutaro like a lower demon? I don't remember.
Uh,
I'm pretty
it,
sure he's a lower
I,
moon.
yeah, but the comparison isn't regarding strength. It's just to show that blood demon arts typically don't scale to the user in speed. So
Okay, my
Tanjiro,
disagreement with that is though I just feel like Gyutaro would be way less skilled compared to somebody like Kabushima, so I don't think it would work unless you could show it happening with like one of the upper moons, the higher end upper moons, because there's obviously a difference between skill, strength, and all that between every upper moon and every demon within the 12 Kazuki, right? So if you're gonna is that's like for example that's like me trying to compare how slow Shaq's jump shot is compared to LeBron's jump shot, right? And saying, well, if Shaq's jump shot is slow, then obviously someone like LeBron's jump shot should be as slow as well. And it doesn't make sense because we know LeBron is more skilled overall,
okay,
right?
no, so I don't think that analogy is analogous. Because like the jump shot, the speed of the jump shot is a like direct correlation. It's like the skill of the wielder. My argument, right, is that sure, the stronger the demon gets, right, the faster that blood demon art will be. That's fine. However, it's just consistent. Like we see it, like I said, with Tanjiro versus Gyutaro, he's able to like react to the BDA, but he gets completely blitzed by Gyutaro like seconds before. We see it with like Gyu versus Akaza. He's able to like cut through the shockwaves, but fails to like adequately react to a kick from Akaza and gets sent completely flying. And I think that in this situation, right, when we're looking at Muichiro versus Kokushiba and Muichiro reacting to Koku, right, we need to look at which interpretation is more likely. Whether he just, suddenly got a massive amp that boosted him from being massively below Koku regularly to being relative to him. Or, right, it's just the case that Koku's blood demon art just doesn't scale to himself and it's like slower than he is, which
Okay,
I think
so
is more
and you
likely.
think okay. First I'll address this analogous point. I do think that it's analogous because we're taking an aspect of what basketball is a part of and seeing, and we're basically telling the difference between two skills, right? Well, two speeds of that same skill. And that's called the argument at hand right now deals with the 12 Kazuki and their skills and their aspects and in the speed difference, right? So I think that it's pretty analogous because I'm taking two different situations and playing into the same thing. And to the second point, sure, he's not. I think the reason why Conjo's able to react to the shockwaves and stuff like that is because it's more of a distance thing rather than a speed difference, right? I think that if something is farther away but it moves at a certain speed, right? I think you have a higher chance of dodging it compared to if something's closer to you and is going at that speed, right? I would be able to dodge. Let's just say I'm able to dodge a punch before I. No, my fault. I'll be able to dodge something like a dodgeball coming at me easier than I would be able to dodge a punch, right? And let's just say in this hypothetical situation, they're at the same speed. That is just a distance thing because if something is coming towards you from a farther distance than a shorter one, you would have there's an interval to which you can react faster compared to the punch, right? So I think that would be the reason for why you would probably think that it's slower, but I don't think that it means it's like some type of drastic significant difference. I just think that because of the time differences or distance, they get leeway to dodge it.
Okay, so like your first thing about like the analogy, I think I already responded to that. And I kind of said that it's not analogous because you're trying to use this analogy to explain why it's more like concrete that the BDAs, or like it's more concrete that, oh, just because Gyutaro's BDA doesn't scale to him and Arceus doesn't mean that Kokushibo's doesn't because Kokushibo's more skilled. And I think that your jump shot analogy doesn't really correlate in this situation because the jump shot thing, sure, the more skilled you are in basketball, right, the faster and more accurate your jump shot is going to be. However, we're not looking at the speed of the BDA. We're looking at the speed of the BDA in relation to the person or like to the demon that's using that BDA. So I just don't think that it takes into account all the factors. And then what you said about like the range and the distance thing, I agree. I think that the distance of an attack, right, decides how adequately you'll be able to dodge it. Which is why I'm saying Muichiro dodging Kokushiba's attacks does not mean that he scales to Kokushiba, especially because if you look at like the second instance in which he dodges in which like it's him, Gyome, and Sanemi being attacked, and he's able to like weave through Kokushiba's attacks, right? In that specific instance, we see that he's like the furthest away from the attack source. So I just think that in this specific scenario, he's not dodging attacks that scale to Kokushiba. We don't really know how fast they are, aside from them being like considered to be fast. So I just don't think that you can use those feats to boost Muichiro anyway.
Okay, so my response to that would be that if you accept that the little argument I gave about distance, things of that sort, I would say that they still scale to Kokushiba or scale somewhat near Kokushiba. It's the distance factor that plays a part. So even if he can be the farthest away from the attack, that's fine. It can still scale to Kokushiba. He just has the chance to dodge it because of the distance. So I don't think that was like an actual argument against what I was saying. And the thing is, if it is accepted that with distance comes an easier chance to dodge, they can still scale close to each other, and the basketball analogy would still make sense. So it would just be that if if Shaq shoots slow, he's less skilled than LeBron when it comes to shooting. But since LeBron's a more skilled shooter, he shoots faster and more efficiently. That would also go through. So I think we can either move on, or you can like give some type of better argument for why it would be slower, or it doesn't really scale to Kokushiba, because you already accepted that it can scale the same, but it can just be a distance factor.
Um, yeah, so I didn't accept that they could scale the same with just a distance factor. What I said was that I agree with the fact that it could be a distant thing, right? Like it's a possibility. However, right, I
So
think
you
that just
agree? All right, so you did agree then.
no, I said
You
that
did
it's
agree
a
then.
possibility,
I,
right?
I just
I
said
think
that.
no, but that's
I
the
said
thing.
it's a possibility, right?
Yeah,
And I
but
said that you can give a
I'm not
different
agreeing.
argument that justifies it. So you did agree.
Yeah, but I think that this possibility doesn't help you. I think it helps me more, right? So obviously, right, let me respond to like the part you said about the distance again. So you said that it could scale to Kokushibo. And I just don't think it does because as I've shown, right, well like as I've stated, if you want stands I can show you. We see that typically, right? We see it with Akaza and we see it with Gyutaro, that the speed of your BDA doesn't always scale or doesn't like regularly scale, right? To the demon that's casting it, right? And I gave you those two examples of Tandra being blitzed by Gyutaro and then managing to react to Gyutaro's blood demon art in the same instance. And you know, Gyu being able to cut the shockwaves and failing to react adequately to Ox in the next instance. And I say, well, if we look at these two instances, we can see it doesn't always scale. So it would just be more probable or more likely that in the same instance, like with Muichiro, it's the same. Um, and then with the basketball analogy, like I said, you're drawing a comparison between the skills of the shooters and the speed at which they shoot, right? And I'm saying that, of course, right, I don't disagree. I think that if you have two people, right, two basketballers or two swordsmen, the more skilled swordsman will have faster attacks, right? That's fine. Whether these attacks, however, like you're missing one factor, right? And the factor that you're missing is what's it called? Whether the speed of the BDA, right? Like, because obviously the basketball analogy can't account for this, right? But whether the speed of the BDA scales to Kokushiba, I don't disagree. I think that Kokushiba's BDA is going to be faster than Arcus's, who's going to be faster than Gyutaro's, right? Whether that BDA would scale to Kokushiba is a different matter. And I think that I've just proved like consistently that it wouldn't scale to Kokushiba at all. And that even if it did scale like similarly to Kokushiba, Muichiro's distance from the BDA would also allow him to like what's it called? Not like I don't think react is the word, but it's not really a reaction feat because of the distance between him and the BDA and like the interval of time that he has to react, as opposed to reacting to Kokushiba in like an actual hand-to-hand combat situation. So yeah, if you think you've responded, we can move on. I don't mind.
All right. Well, I'll just do this because I don't want us to go straight there. I think you just repeated an argument that was already questioned. But uh, yeah, if it's a possibility that it can be a distance factor, right? I think that what should be taken into account here is how the blood demon art works and how they use it, right? I think the way that Coco Shibo uses it, like, because I know you've read One Piece, right?
One Piece, I'm knowledgeable, yeah.
Okay, well, have you seen at least Mihawk's like attacks before?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you know like when he slashes down and how it just makes like an after effect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I would argue here is that when Kokushibo uses his blood demon art, it's kind of like Mihawk's like after effect thing. It's just that when he slashes and uses it, it basically makes an after effect based off of the speed of the attack used by Kokushibo's sword, right? Because that's how he uses blood demon art. So if that is the case, then I would say that you would have to accept that it's somewhat relative to Kokushibo, seeing as that it had to derive from him in his speed and it also his strength. So yeah, you would have to somehow or some way accept that it would be relative.
So
I think that's
essentially,
a
right?
more probable basis for why they'd be relative.
So essentially, what you're arguing is the reason as to why, um, what's it called? The reason as to why it would scale similarly to him is because the crescents that he slashes, or like the airwaves that he sends, are derived from his strength.
From his strength and speed, right? Because what's it called?
Uh,
He's basically making changes within he's making changes within space technically, right? And when he
I don't,
does
I
the
don't,
thing,
I don't
when
think
he
that's the
does the
case.
thing, okay, so what? Okay, why? All right, if I were to punch something, right, and let's just say that it gives off an after effect. Let's just say that if I punch, it can create like an air bubble that can fly forward. If it's like a projectile needs some type of cause that'll make it go forward, right? So think of it like a catapult. If I pull back a catapult, let's just
Mm-mm.
say 6 feet back, it's going to fly faster than what it would if I were to push it, 3 feet back, right? Because of because of the force being used. I'm saying that the force being used by Kokoshibo would have to entail some type of relativity because it wouldn't make sense physically for him to make it to for him to use a lot of force for an attack, yet it goes drastically slower than him. Unless you can prove that like the blood demon art is like weighted or it has some type of like severe drawback, which I don't think you can because I don't think it's ever stated. That I don't see why we have any reason to believe that it's just drastically slower than him. And
Okay, yeah.
I'll just say that it's a distance
I'll
factor.
I'll respond to that. So the reason why I disagree with what you're saying is because I don't think that Mihawk sword slashes are analogous to Kokushibo's, and simultaneously I don't think that Kokushibo's sword slashes are derived from his physical strength and force output. We know that Kokushibo's blood demon art allows him to create crescent moon slashes, right? That's like what it's stated to do. By your argument, right? Uh, if these slashes are like arising from his strength, then in order to create those various slashes, he would have to slash various times. However, we see, right, that whenever he uses his blood demon art, majority of the time he slashes once, and then it's stated directly by Sanemi that there are little crescents within these slashes that like he does like the statement says something along the lines of um there's like more slashes. He slashes once, but there's more than what he slashed, which wouldn't make sense, right? And we know that blood demon arts are supernatural, right? Which means that it just gives credence to the fact that he's creating these slashes. We don't know how he's doing it, but it's not from his force output because if it was, he would have to swing each time he wanted to create a new slash. However, Sanemi directly refutes this and says, oh, he can create slashes without swinging, or he only swings once, but there's like many crescents that can cut you regardless. So I just don't think that it's born from his physical ability.
Okay, so that's just a quantitative difference. It's like that's kind of like me having a gun that's supposed to shoot one bullet, but then it shoots out three, right? Or it's just like if I have a gun that inserts one bullet, right, but during the process of being shot, it splits into three. It's just like a quantitative difference. I don't think that really means that it's not part of his force because obviously, let's just say you would agree that he can suppress his blood demon art, right?
Suppress it? What do you mean by suppress?
Like he can make it weaker. He doesn't have to use full. He doesn't have to use it to its full power every single time he uses it.
Um, of course, yeah.
Okay, yeah, then you would have to accept then that there's some type of force factor here, and also with the Mihawk analogy, I hope you know that that also deals with supernatural abilities. There's obviously you will never see somebody taking a sword and just slashing down, and then somehow it generates a wave that can fucking affect the whole ground and attack somebody, right? That's obviously supernatural as well. So I think that it corresponds because if you can accept that, what's it called? If you can accept that Kokushiba can draw back or like suppress his blood demon art. And even though there's multiple crescents that can touch you, even with one slash, That's just the quantitative difference rather than it doesn't have to be forced because what's it called? It doesn't have to be forced because he only slashes once and he can make multiple slashes out of this one slash.
Yeah,
That's
could
yeah,
you wait? Sorry, could you
quantitative
check
difference.
scans? Could you check scans too? Because I read through chapter 167 whilst you were talking, and Sonomy states you slash without swinging, right? So your analogy about a bullet that shoots one bullet but it splits into three doesn't really work because it's stated by Sonomy that he slashes without swinging. And as for like your argument about if I agree that he can like regulate the strength of his blood demon art, then I must also agree that what's it called? That it's based on his force. I don't think that's the case necessarily because, as I said before, blood demon arts are supernatural, and we see like with people like Nezuko, they can like regulate the heat from their blood demon art so that it doesn't like burn people around them. Like when she ignites Tanjiro's sword. Obviously, if she was using full strength, Tanjiro would have suffered some sort of like um repercussions from this, right? However, he doesn't. And then we see that she can use it against Darky and just like completely burn her to shreds. So I think that regulating the strength of your blood demon art is not necessarily like a force or like a physical thing. It could just be like a mental thing. Because not all blood demon arts, like I said, like arise from physicals. And I'm showing here that it's not a force output thing that gives birth to Kokushiba's blood demon art. It's more so him just creating these slashes somehow. So yeah.
All right, hold on. I'm gonna respond to that. Give me a second. I'm looking at something. Shit, bro. Okay, yeah, I think the reason why Sonoby's saying that he can slash without the reason why he's saying that he can slash without I mean he can attack without slash. What the fuck says I really don't care what he said. I think the reason why he's saying that is because of the qualitative difference between all the slashes. He can slash once, like you said, and it can make all these multiple slashes. So then, yeah, it would seem like he's slashing, or yeah, he's slashing without actually cutting or anything. Wait, hold on, let me restate that because I don't want to look stupid. Yeah, he says you slash without swinging, right? Yeah, is it saying that because of how the moon breathing works, right? He slashes once, or he had at least at one point in time for him to use any technique, he would have to bring out his sword once. So if that is the case, right, when he uses this technique, that would just mean that the way Sonomy sees it, because he swung once and there's multiple slashes incoming, it's like he can slash without swinging it, right? So that I think that makes more sense than he can just do this without doing anything because we know that blood demon arts and things of that sort are still derivatives of every other users, right? And they would have to use it somehow in some way. So yeah.
Yes, like I posted like a following scan from the same chapter, and Sonomy states he makes an irregular and complex array of blades spring out from a single slashing attack. Their length and size always change, so they don't have fixed forms, right? Uh, I still think that this shows that your bullet analogy is disanalogous because what's it called? If it splits into three, for example, it wouldn't be irregular, nor would it be complex, unless you want to argue, right, that he can like manually split his blood demon art or something like that, or he can split the waves that he creates or something along those lines. Which at that point, I think that you're just making like an argument of loads of assumptions and flaws that you have to like account for. Whereas I'm simply arguing that his blood demon art, right, which we already know, um, are supernatural abilities that are bestowed to demons, like Arcus's compass needle and Doma being able to create ice from seemingly thin air, right? This blood demon art simply allows him to create like multiple crescents from one slash, right? Which is what Sanemi says. He doesn't say, oh, what's it called? He takes one slash and he like creates three from that one slash. He says that he slashes one time. However, there are multiple complex slashes that are constantly changing in form. So I don't really, I don't know if I responded properly. I might have not. I might have said something that didn't really refute your argument. If so, let me know. But
Okay,
I just
so
don't think, yeah.
I thought you're done,
You
my
can
fault.
go.
If you're not done, you can finish.
No, you can go. You can go.
Okay, so my thing is, I think that the scan you just sent kind of helped my argument, but I think you also missed the point of the gun analogy, right? The point of the gun analogy was just to say that you could put one bullet in the gun, and there could be something in that process that puts in a 3 and it shoots out a different quantity of bullets than what you put in, right? I'm saying from this single slash, he creates multiple slashes, right? From the presence. That was the whole point of that analogy. I mean, you kind of like misinterpreted or like kind of misconstrued it to try to help your argument a little bit, but that's fine. Yeah, I feel like this accepted my argument because it says that from a single slash he makes multiple slashes, which was this equality thing, right? So if this is the case that he makes multiple slashes from one slash, then my previous argument for why sodomy says that he can slash without swinging would go through. Uh, Secondly, actually, no, I don't think I need to make another point yet. Cause I think I don't know if I can
Mm.
well all your claims or like all your arguments, but I know I addressed the two main ones, which is that the slashing and then sodomy and the analogy. So yeah, I may have missed an
So
argument.
are you aware of like Kokushiba's blood demon art being like the crescents within the slashes that he makes?
Yeah, it can be the crescents in it, but the whole point is that it still needs some type of force from him in order to actually happen.
Yeah, you
That's the
said
whole
it.
point of
You
it
said
because
it
it's
still
still it's
needs.
still a
You
derivative.
said
Oh,
it.
all right, hold on. You can speak. My fault.
Yeah, you said it still needs some sort of what's it called? Some sort of force from him.
Yeah.
I don't see why this is a necessity. Like obviously he combines his blood demon art with his moon breathing, which is why he tends to use it when he's slashing. I don't see why he can't just create these blades without slashing, because he doesn't like actually if you look at the size of the blades in relation to like the size of his actual slashes, the small crescent blades are like way smaller and more numerous. So I just don't think that it's logical for you to say, yeah, he slashes once, but it splits into three, and then it like births multiple smaller crescents, and this is all just a product of skill. I don't think that's the case. I think that it's just more likely and more what's it called, more probable that he's using his blood demon art to create these slashes to aid him whilst using his moon breathing form.
Okay, so I have a question for you then.
Mhm.
If you believe that he can truly slash without swinging, can you show me an instance where Tokushiba just stands there and then like the crescents come out from a slash without him swinging anything or having like any type of involvement with the attack? Because
Well,
you've already agreed that he can suppress his blood demon art and his moon breathing and things like that sort. So that would already entail that he has some type of involvement with his attacks and some type of force like in there. So that already basically shows some type of probability or some type of necessity. And it doesn't really matter which one you argue because it's still consistent within Demon Slayer that all people with breathings and blood demon art say it's still derivative of them. But yeah, you would have to show me some type of situation where he can just stand there and then the blood demon art still happens. Because all it is it's like a what's it called? It's a metaphor. Yeah, it's a metaphor. He's saying because this slash creates a complex array of multiple crescents, multiple slashes from one swing, then it's like he's flashing without swinging. That's my whole point. So you would have
okay,
to
yeah.
show that.
So,
You have any
for the
evidence of
first
it?
for the first thing, I don't think I need to show you evidence like from the manga, right? I don't think there's an instance where he does it without swinging. However, I don't think that this is like a refutation. I don't think that this makes my argument false, right? Because even though there's no like even though there's like an absence of evidence, that's no evidence of absence. And I still think that it could be more probable, or like what I'm arguing could be more probable. And the reason why I say this is because of the second thing, right? The reason why you're arguing that it's a necessity is because you're saying that I agree that he can regulate the force of his BDA. And I said, yeah, he can, right? But then I gave an example and I said, like, we see other demons regulate the force of their BDA without using like um what's it called? Without using physical or like physical movements, right? And your argument about
Wait,
him
hold on.
regulating
Can
the
you show that?
force, huh?
Can you show that?
I gave the example of Nezuko when she ignites Tanjiro's sword.
I know. Can you show it? 'Cause I'm pretty sure that there was some type of like physical play there.
Okay.
That Infinity, that is C. I can tell by his voice.
Um,
What? I thought I was gonna call my name.
I need to find the chapter. Chapter 112. Demon Slayer. Alright, yeah. Okay, so what happens? She like puts her hand on the katana and ignites it, and Andre is just like standing there and not affected. His hands are literally in the flame, and he's just not affected.
I mean, the Pondro not being affected doesn't matter. The whole point was just that Nezuko would still have to have some type of physical play there, which you
I
just
don't think
basically prove.
no, but that's the thing. I don't think that the physical play, right? You're arguing that okay, you're saying that he slashes, right? And that's what creates the crescents, correct?
Yeah, I'm saying he slashes, and then the Blood Demon Art goes within the slashes, and then with that single slash, that's when the Blood Demon Art like.
Okay, so how does the blood demon art go within the slashes?
It's literally shown. What you can. It's
Yeah,
in the
but
scans that
no,
you
no,
can
no.
check.
I didn't ask how or why. I said how. I mean, I didn't ask. I asked how, not why, or like
I don't think.
where.
I don't think how it happens really matters. I think what matters is that it happens.
Okay, so you don't
It's
have
not
a
like they pop
reason.
out of thin air though. It's not like they pop out of thin air and it's like, oh yeah, I'm in a slash now. Like that doesn't
No, no,
make sense. But it would have
that's
to derive from
precisely
him some sort.
that's precisely what happens. What happens is, right? Because you just said right now that you don't know how, you don't think it matters how. I think it matters how, right? Because you're arguing that this crescent slashes from his BDA are derived from him slashing himself. And I'm saying that the crescent slashes are simply created by him, as are all other BDAs, right? It doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to have a prerequisite of him slashing. And we see this from like Nezuko, where she just puts her hand on something and it ignites. Or like I don't
Wait,
know,
hold on.
Akaza.
Isn't Blood Demon Art's derivative of Muzan's blood or demon blood? Okay, yeah. So that would mean that in order for him to even use the Blood Demon Art, it can't just pop out of thin air. It would have to derive from him and his blood, and it would have to go embedded within the slash.
See,
So
that's the thing. That's the thing, right?
I don't
We
think you
don't.
can just argue that it just comes out of thin air or it comes out of nowhere and it just amps the fucking thing. It
See,
derives from the blood.
the issue with that argument, right, is that although it's stated that blood demon arts are a result of like having high amounts of Muzan's blood, right, it doesn't have to come from having Muzan's blood. An example, right? If you remember, like in the beginning of the series, the guy with the arrows on his eyes, right? He throws his hands forward, and then the arrows just sprout from his hands, and there's no blood there. There's no nothing, right? So, um,
Wait,
like what I was
how do
saying,
you
right?
know that?
Huh?
I
Because
mean,
there's no blood
I
that
haven't read the very beginning, so I would what's it called?
just
I would
I can send
either
you a clip.
show it.
Okay. Yeah, Harbor. This is literally how it looks in the manga as well. It pops out within it. But then yeah, as I was saying, right, what I was trying to like say before I brought up this point was that
Yeah, that
if you
you
don't
talking about
have
that arrow coming from his eyes?
and I was saying
That's
if
the
you don't have
result of that's the result of what's it called? The blood demon art from Muzan's blood.
but you're saying it
Is it not?
you're trying to assert that it can't pop out of thin air, and I've shown you an instance where it pops out of thin air quite literally.
No, it doesn't pop out of thin air. When you look at that animation, basically what happens is that he uses an eye and it forms an arrow.
It forms an arrow where
And then it goes and attacks him. It isn't. Well, but
it forms
what I
it.
mean by pop out of thin air, because I think that there's some type of like misinterpretation here. What I mean by pop out of thin air, I'm referring to that it doesn't really have a cause. It just comes like out of nowhere. But we see here that it does have a cause.
So
So
there's like a
it would still have to derive from Kokushiba, which is my point.
Yeah, I think that there can be a cause. Like if you're trying to say like, oh, his like what cause are you seeing here? That he's like his eye blinks? Is that
Yeah,
the
his
cause?
eye blinks, then it makes the arrow, then it goes and attacks Tundra. So it doesn't
Oh,
come out thin air. It just what's it called? It's a derivative of the eye.
okay. So, but it doesn't come from the eye itself, correct?
It doesn't have to come straight out of the eye. That's fine.
Yeah, but that
Doesn't need to be.
what you're arguing, right, is that Kokushiba's blood demon art is directly from his swings, and I'm saying, how does? And I asked you, right? I asked you, okay, so then how do the crescents or how does his BDA become embedded into his slashes? And you said you don't think that matters, and I've said,
Oh,
and I've been trying to
Yeah,
say,
the
right?
reason why I said
Wait,
it
wait,
didn't
wait, wait,
matter
wait,
is
wait. I
because it
wasn't
comes
done. I
from his
wasn't done.
blood.
And I was trying to say, right? I was trying to say, I have like a a likelihood, right? And I'm saying that it does matter where it comes from because if you're gonna argue that it comes from his slashes or like him actively like slashing his sword, then you need to explain how him slashing his sword once can birth multiple slashes of varying size within a slash, which is just like totally unnatural, right? Or supernatural, which is the definition of what a BDA is. And then you said that it has to be birthed from Muson's blood. And I said, well, okay, sure, right? That's not really how BDAs work though, right? You don't have to like have your blood out to activate your BDA or like a physical cue, right? Sure, Yahaba's eyes close here, but the BDA itself does not sprout from his eye. It just comes out of like the air in front of him and immediately begins to target Tanjiro. So in the same way, why can't Kokushibo just, swing his sword using moon breathing and then after swinging his sword, he like uses his BDA and puts those crescents within the slash instead of you like
Okay.
making an argument of he swings and then we don't know how this happens, but like there's varying slashes of different sizes that are complex and irregular that are constantly changing form. Like it's just there's many assumptions that you have to account for and explain that I just don't think you can do.
Okay. So a simple counter to this is just that if it does come from the eyes of that person, and it does come what's called, let's just say it comes out of thin air, right? Like it just
Mm.
pops up after he does the eye, closes the eye or blinks, right? My whole idea, okay. My whole idea off of that is that it still takes some type of force for him to be able to do that. Mind you, he still has to control the arrow, and he has to like make it go to Tondro. Then he has to make it go around, and he has to make it press his arm, right? So I'm saying that even if the blood isn't out or anything of that sort, it still has some type of derivation from it, right? And that it still requires some type of force. I'm saying that we can't just assume that because we don't see the way that Kokushiba puts his crescent moons into a slash, that it doesn't really have a cause in that when he slashes, they just come out of nowhere, not derivative from him or anything like that, and they're just embedded within the slash. My point is just that, well, with all blood demon arts or anything of that sort, there has to be a cause, and if you can draw back or you can suppress an ability, then that means some type of force there is involved. So I feel like we're gonna go circular soon, so you can give
Yeah,
your last
I just
contention and you can end the recording.
yeah, my last contention to that point pretty much is I don't think that what you're trying to argue is you're trying to argue that it necessitates, right? That if you can regulate the force of your BDA, it necessitates that there must be some sort of like physical exertion or whatever.
fucking
I don't think
dumb.
that's the case. And I already I already showed an instance where we see Nezuko set Tanjiro's sword on fire, and Tanjiro, like a demon slayer, is holding the blade, and he's not affected by the heat, right? Whereas we see her burn Darky, right? And when she burns Darky, Darky's like left like, looking like a mess. So short, like clearly, as what's it called? The regulation of force doesn't have to be physical. It could also be mental. Like I can will my BDA to be less potent, or will the fire to be less dominant, whatever, and that could be fine. And then second, right? I just think that once again, your argument has like too many assumptions, and one thing that you're not accounting for, which is how the BDA is embedded into the slashes. You argued that BDAs can't come out of nowhere. You didn't really like I haven't really heard you give a reason as to why they can't come out of nowhere. We see it come out of nowhere from Yaba. Sure, there's like a cue, which is his eyes closing or whatever. But this cue can also be present within like the mind. Like Kokuba can just say, okay, activate BDA, and then the BDA activates. I don't see why this cue has to be physical. And then yeah, I just don't think that you've accounted for the things I said prior about how his BDA would be embedded, and why it's more, and like I said, that would be more likely that it just comes out of nowhere because the BDA is supernatural. But yeah,
All right.
that's just based on what I heard.
I'll just give my conclusion, and then if you, I mean, that could just be your conclusion if you want. I don't think it's like. I
I'll
think that was
listen and
pretty much just a
I'll
repeat.
listen.
That was pretty much just a recap of what happened with like an extra step. But yeah, I think I'll just give my conclusion, and then we can just end the rec after this. So I think that I won this point. Basically, all I'm trying to say is that uh, when sodomy refers to the. Oh wait, are we gonna conclude on like every single point, like an overarching conclusion, or are we gonna like do this point in specific?
We can conclude on like the specific point about what's it called? Mutual being relative.
Well, you said what?
I said we can conclude on mutual being relative.
Okay, so the overarching thing. Okay, so I think that I won this point. I think that in order for there to be some type of relativity, there has to be what's it called? Reaction, uh effects, such as like, punching somebody and things like that. Some type of combative what's it called? Back and forthness. And I think that Mauricio was shown to do that, seeming as he's attacked Kokushibo a couple of times, and he's also dodged and saved Sonomy from Kokushibo's blood demon art in his swings. So going past that, we were arguing whether or not the blood demon art is like relative to the user at hand, to which I say that it is. I think that it is because it's a derivative of their blood and it's a derivative of them. So they would have to have some type of scale that would make it like relative to me as it derives from them, right? So the analogy I gave is that with Mihawk, you also have like a supernatural ability. We see that when Mihawk slashes down, it creates some type of after effect, which can affect from a distance, right? It can affect things from distance. So I was saying with that analogy, I think that we can conclude that in this situation when Koshibo swings his sword and it makes these flashes with the crest with the blood demon art, that it would have the force from that would have to come from Kokushibo, and that would mean that it would have to scale somewhat relative. And this is why I made the catapult analogy, right? I said that if I were to draw back a catapult with a ball in it 6 feet, it would go a farther distance, and it would the speed and acceleration of that thing would kind of be relative to how far or how much force I put into that. And that's why I also said that if I were to do that instead of 6 feet, put at 3 feet, then the results would be less. So after that, he ended up agreeing that uh, Shibo and people who have blood demon arts can suppress their blood demon arts, which would obviously entail or even like borderline assume that there would have to be some type of force in play, because in order for you to be able to suppress something, we'd have to have some type of control or domination over that thing. So I think with that being said, how the blood demon art comes into play doesn't really matter because we don't really see that. It's more the fact that it's still a derivative of him, and he still controls it in a sense to which we would have to accept that he has some type of force over it. So it'd be somewhat relative. He also brought up an example within an earlier series of some demon attacking Tanjiro with an arrow. My whole response to that is just that it's a derivative of the eye and the blood, and he's still controlling it, seeming as he has to make the arrow go to Tanjiro, and he has to make the arrow wrap around Tanjiro, and he has to make it press his arm as well in order to be able to affect Tanjiro. So it cannot come directly from the eye. I don't think that contends my argument. My argument just
Oh,
is
can you mute your mic, bro? So, can you mute your
yeah,
mic?
that's my conclusion. All right, we can end the recording now. Unless there's something that you want to
I'll be quick. So pretty much, I think I won this point because we first started with whether the BDA should scale to Koku. You disagreed. Gave like two instances or like a consistency argument where I showed that BDAs don't typically scale to the user. You gave the basketball analogy. I refuted it. You then made a different argument or a different refutation, and you brought up the bullet analogy. And I said, okay, the bullet analogy isn't analogous because it's stated, you said that it splits into three, However, it stated that he creates like various a complex and irregular array of slashes, which wouldn't be the same as splitting into three parts. And it also states that it changes into like different forms and like constantly changes size, which wouldn't make sense naturally if it's born from a slash. Um, I can't really remember what happened after that. And then we started talking about like the regulation thing, regulating force or whatever. And I was like, okay, you said, oh, in order for like, if you agree that you can control the strength of your BDA, then you have to agree to the fact that there's some sort of physical thing that's a part of it. I said, no, it could just be mental. Like you can mentally will your fire in Nezuko's case to just like not burn people. You could willingly you could willingly or mentally pull your arrows to move or something like that. Like it could just be a mental thing. I then asked you like how you think that his BDA becomes embedded into his moon breathing slashes and the way that it does. You said you don't think it matters. You then went on to say that it's like it comes from his like actual swing of his sword. And you also brought up the Mihawk analogy as well. And I don't think the Mihawk analogy was I refuted the Mihawk analogy by saying that the BDA doesn't actually come from his swings. But yeah, as I was saying, I asked you like how the BDA becomes embedded or whatever, and you said you don't think it matters. And I just said that it's more probable that it pops out of thin air, or not pops out of thin air, but he mentally creates the crescent slashes and embeds them into the crescents, as opposed to your argument, which just holds too many assumptions. Like if we take your argument for face value, and we'd have to ask ourselves questions like, how much time is he swinging? How is he creating irregular and complex crescents that are not the same size as his initial slash, etc., etc. And I also appealed to like the definition of a BDA and it being supernatural to explain why it'd be more probable. So I just think that with all those like points that I kind of just won. But yeah. Wait, let's see.